Yeah.
Never get the date. What? Say the 23rd? Yeah. June 23rd, TPC 122, 5:04 p.m. Eastern Time with my buddy Aaron Shepard and Paul Whitcomb. We are here to talk about Skunk Works of Lockheed Martin. And, I realized I've really, on the F-117 episode I did it on episode 118, not 117. And I can't believe I dropped the ball on that. And now for the last couple of days, I've been
missed opportunity, brother.
I know, 23rd, and now it's episode 122. I really butchered it. But today, so we're talking about Skunk Works, obviously, and Aaron, being the aerospace buff he is, knows all about it. I emailed the former vice president of Skunk Works, and I talked to his secretary for a half hour, and I might be able to get him to do the podcast. So, yeah.
Whoa. Amazing.
That's dope.
That would be awesome. Yeah. And so, yeah. I showed her some of like the more professional episodes, and I said, and there are some where it's just me and my friends, kind of acting like jackasses. And today will probably be a hybrid of that. But so yeah, I'm gonna field some questions and see if I can get them on, see if I can get them to crack open about the UFOs that we all know is there. But yeah, man. So yeah. So Paul, Aaron told me yesterday a nickname he had heard for the F-117 that I had never heard before, and it wasn't in Skunk Works. It's called the Wet Dream. And it's because it came in the middle of the night. You didn't know.
Yeah, that I got that from the Fighter Pilot podcast. They did a really good episode on the F-117. The pilot was phenomenal. He told so many interesting stories. And it's like it was so good of a podcast. I was like, damn, I should have become a Fighter Pilot. Like, that's awesome.
I tried, but they said my eyesight was so bad I'd have to sit in the back seat of the F-14.
Yeah.
And I thought,
hey, man, that's
no.
not bad.
Well,
yeah, screw that.
Yeah, I'm older than you guys. This was during Top Gun and all that craziness.
Yeah.
Walk right out of the theater right next door to the recruiter, man.
Oh, yeah, man. Hell yeah. Did you know the Pentagon actually has a liaison office in Hollywood? And there's incentive, like for the Transformers movies. Like they will basically lease all of like the what am I looking for? The machinery, the weapons, the vehicles at like a greatly reduced price. The Abrams, the whatever, the F-22s, everything just to have in the background and stuff at a greatly reduced price if they get to look over the script and see whether or not it portrays America in a good light. It's true. You can get if you have a movie with all this, whether it's Transformers or Iron Man, if we're going to paint America as the good guys, you'll actually get a like reduced price, which I think is it's smart, man. Hey, use it as your own PR office. You don't want all that stuff and then have it being some like North Korean like propaganda piece, right?
Right.
Oh, it's brilliant. They did it for Battleship, which was a dumb movie, but I loved every minute of it. And Star Trek 4, they filmed on the USS Ranger.
Oh, really?
And I read that in one of those books about how we had to agree to portray the military in a favorable fashion, and they let them right on the aircraft carrier.
Hey, man, makes sense. Why?
What I find is so.
No, you go. Aaron?
It's getting a little laggy, so I can't. So what I find is so fascinating is like when they do these movies, so your Top Guns, your battleships, particularly with Top Gun and now Top Gun 2, like those actors are actually sitting in the cockpit. They're sitting in the back seat. So they're pretending to fly the plane, but they're really pulling like 8-9 Gs. Like, and if you look close enough, especially at the trailer for Top Gun 2, you can tell that Tom Cruise is in the backseat of an F-18 Hornet just by the way things look. And it's just the training that they have to go through as actors to be in that, to shoot in those conditions it's really cool.
Yeah, man, say what you will about him. You got to give your props to Tom Cruise. That man goes all in for every film. Do you know that they're filming a movie in space with him? NASA,
and like I heard the rumors for a while, but then once NASA like publicly announces it, it's real. So, dude, like I'm so excited to see that. Like that's gonna be dope.
Yeah, but even that, it kind of marks a big thing that like it it's now just like the next thing in movies, right? Like Avatar was huge. That and Sky Captain of the World of Tomorrow. Those were both huge because they're like entirely CGI, right? It's kind of cool how this is being marked as just like the next thing in movies. But 50 years ago, like this was insane just to do it, period, to get in space. It's kind of cool how that's just, it's almost cool that the cool thing about it is that it's going to be a movie and not that someone's going to space. Because the more mundane it becomes, the fact that it's going into orbit, I think that just means because we're progressing that much farther. It's no longer headline news, man in space. Right. It's like, dude, we got the International Space Station seeing 16 sunsets a day, running on solar power with people from all corners of the globe, and it's just like, whatever. It's almost good that it becomes run of the mill. Yeah, right. It's almost good that it, like, we don't talk like, oh my god, I have a touchscreen phone, right? It's just like, yeah, man, it's your shitty iPhone. It's already outdated. But that's good because that means that it is just becoming, the entire what the tide lifts, or a rising tide lifts all ships, right? That's what it kind of feels like. So the fact that he's just going to space and it's just like the next Tom Cruise thing, I think that bodes well for all of us, right?
You're absolutely right. Did you guys see the Japanese satellite that landed on that asteroid and is sending back images of the surface of this asteroid? And I saw that and I thought, that's very cool. Yeah. But
the best one, and I can't pronounce the name of it for the life of me, but it's the probe that landed on Titan, which is one of Saturn's moons, and it sent pictures that it took as it was landing. So they like compiled it into a YouTube video where you can see like you're coming through the atmosphere, and now all you see these mountains, and next thing you know, you're landed, and you see a whole bunch of rocks and stuff. And I'm like, it blows my mind that we can do that and we can create that and send it back. But then it also blows my mind that those things happen and literally like it doesn't make headline news. It's almost,
it's a Reddit typical post. It gets a couple golds on Reddit, and then it's and then it's the next thing, right? It's just like the next big thing is, hey, look at this lady do a backflip on a unicycle, and it's okay. But yeah, you're right. It's almost good that it becomes run of the mill. It's What was the name of the one that landed on the comet? It like orbited it, didn't it? And it like shot something down into it.
Can't remember. I can't remember. I just remember
Hayabusa.
Well, Aaron, you said that was the one that you saw in med school that kind of got you going, right?
Oh, that was Comet 67P, and I think Philae lander, something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah, it looked like Philae. Because I remember it made me think of like a biological organelle or something. Like we were probing into it. Have y'all seen that? What is it? Aaron, you just said it, but I don't think this is the one I'm thinking about. Not Titan. Is it Europa or like Io? What's the one that's like all liquid? What's the moon that we think is like mostly liquid?
Say that one more time. I can't hear you.
What is the moon in the solar system that we believe is like mostly liquid? It's gonna has like methane oceans or something.
Oh yeah. There's Europa is the one we think. That's Jupiter, but then Saturn has another one. Like I think it's called Enceladus. Like the people are gonna crucify me for not pronouncing this right. I just know what it is.
Yeah.
But it's shot. They have a picture of like water shooting out from the moon into freaking space.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, isn't one of the things,
amazing.
Yeah. Isn't one of the things we want to do is go shoot like a little submarine in it? Like we want to like shoot a rover, but the rover is going to be a submarine. Dude, that's insane. Yep. That is insane. That is absolutely.
I'll tell you what, I'm volunteering to go. If they're even if it's a one-way trip, I'm on that ship.
Did you see Europa Report?
Yes, I loved it.
Oh God! Except for the giant octopus alien that killed everybody. Like
that part was that was a downer.
That's a downer. But it's like, oh hey, we discovered aliens, but now we're dead. So
that is kind of dark. It pull it full circle. It kind of makes me think of that famous Ben Rich quote, though. Right after he retired from the head of Skunkworks. Didn't Ben Rich say, we have the technology to bring E.T. home? It never really gets brought up. But like the head of Skunkworks says we have the technology to bring ET home. And it's just like, it's a fun quote you see online every once in a while, but it's like, hold on, like pause, rewind. What the hell did he just say? Like, and it's and who else would have an inside scoop on that stuff but Ben Rich, or before him, Clarence Kelly Johnson? Like, that doesn't really get brought up. Like, so what does that mean?
I don't know. I thought that there's a little misdirection going on in this book, and that might be a good example of it. And the way that he stressed so firmly that hypersonic vehicles are just ridiculous. Yeah. I thought he protested way too much there, and he overdid it. And you know very well, I'm sure you do too, Aaron, that the CIA is very active in the publishing industry. And I'm sure when Ben Rich submitted this for clearance, they said, we'd really like you to say something about how stupid the hypersonic plane is.
I thought about that because this is the second time I was listening to it. And, Reagan put forth a request for a Mach 12 fighter jet. And he went on and on about how stupid hypersonics were. But I was thinking, like, he's like, we don't even know how we'd survive. And I was like, well, I'm thinking, like, hold on. X-15 was late 50s, early 60s. Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The leading edges of that thing was made of Inconel. Inconel is what's used in like steel foundries. The buckets, like what metal do you dump liquid metal into? It's kind of, it's like, wait, what is outside the universe? It's like, hold on, if we have liquid metal, what are we putting it into? And it's called Inconel. Inconel was used on the leading edges of the X-15. But you're right, Paul, because he does. There are several times in the book where he lets you in on how he was misleading someone else, right? Whether it's that guy from the Navy that he was like, oh, I don't know what that is, or lying about different planes or projects just to kind of throw people off the trail. It did kind of seem like he committed too hard to saying how unrealistic hypersonics were. You're right, Paul. Listening to it, I was like, it's almost like the little kid, like, hey, did you eat the cookies? No, I didn't eat the cookies. So, like, whatever. But he's like, I didn't eat the cookies. I don't even like cookies. I've never had a cookie in my life. What cookies are you talking about? I've never even seen cookies. It's like, did you eat the cookies? Like, that's what Ben Rich did. Like, hypersonics could never work. Not in 100 years. You'll never see it work. And it's like, Ben, do you got something to tell us? Like, it seems like you're like, have a seat, Ben. Have a seat. But because then he goes on to mention how the D-21 drone, he keeps saying in the book, top speed of Mach 3.2. But then he drops in, I think, I took a video of it, I think like chapter 19, he says that it went 4,000 plus miles per hour. That's Mach 5.2. That's right. Hypersonic. That is 2 times the speed of sound faster than the SR-71. And he doesn't mince words. He's not like, oh, it's hypersonic-ish. Says 4,000 miles per hour plus. That's Mach 5.2. No ifs, ands, or buts. So I agree with you, Paul. It does kind of seem, it's almost a little, he overplays his hand.
Yeah, thinking about it though, when you think about Air Force or aircraft development, the United States has a great history of that. The thing that I always tell people is that it's very common to think that Area 51 is a government conspiracy, but if you approach it from the mindset of the government, where you have these top secret airplanes that can go at the time maybe like Mach 1, Mach 2, maybe Mach 3, and they have these weird kooky designs and you see them flying in the sky. Like if you've never seen the X-15 or the SR-71, you wouldn't know that that's a plane. You'd think it was an alien.
Yeah.
And so when people were reporting seeing it and they're saying it's aliens, if I were the US military and I were developing a top secret plane, I'd be like, oh yeah, it's aliens. That's not a military plane.
That's aliens. Yeah. It's brilliant.
Of course. Like Asimov said, right? That any technology sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic. So that plays right into our own hands. We want Project Blue Book because we want to mislead people that there are aliens, when in fact, if in 1962 we're flying the SR-71, which they claim remains the fastest, highest flying airplane ever made, 50 plus years, almost 60 years later,
Yeah.
Of course, Project Blue Book is going to be fascinating, and everyone wants to know about it.
Yeah.
But we know better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have an exact source for this too. It's just something I've kind of heard along the way. But I think back when they were first testing jet aircraft in the 40s and 50s, what the test pilots would do is they would put on gorilla suits. So that way, if somebody took a picture of them or somebody saw them and said, yeah, I saw a plane being flown by a gorilla, it would sound so weird that nobody would actually believe it. Well, so it was another way to kind of it's a layer of deception to keep people off the trail of our
It's brilliant though, don't you think, Aaron? I mean, nobody would believe me if I saw that.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's just like the Bigfoot movies. You see that and you're like, obviously it's fake.
Yeah.
So I think it's just brilliant.
It is.
And I would love for there to be an update to this book that goes to 2020. Because when does it kind of end? Like 1995?
Well, he died in, I think, 95. So it had to have been before that. Yeah. Well, in Annie Jacobson's Area 51, she actually talks about that, Aaron, how when they were flying the jet aircraft out there with that sweet Nazi technology, well, because Area 51 is inside of the Nevada test site, right? The Nevada test site's the size of like Sweden or something. It's massive. So it's an air base inside of an air base. And even if you're not cleared for that inner air base, you can't go near there. It says off limits to you as a military base is off limits to us, the citizenry. Well, they talk about how they'd go up there and they'd have these jet aircraft and they'd be leaving behind these plumes of smoke. But not only that, they didn't have propellers. And so there'd be other propeller-driven crafts going up there and seeing this thing. And they're like, where the hell is the propeller? And so one thing one of the pilots did is he like conversed with the CIA and was like, I got an idea. Went back to like Las Vegas and literally bought movie prop gorilla helmets or gorilla masks and gloves. And they're like, let's just fly this. And the CIA's got their ears in all of the bars around the Nevada test sites. And so you'd have these well-respected, almost like the Top Guns of their days being like, I saw this plane. It was right next to me, no propeller on it. And it took off like nothing, 100 miles per hour faster than me. And everyone's like, wow, holy cow. And he's like, yeah. And get this, there was a gorilla flying it. It's like, all right, buddy, like, piss in the cup. Like, we got to see what you're on. But that's what happened. And it's brilliant. It hides itself. The truth hides itself.
It's a level beyond what the Germans were doing by putting the non-functioning propellers on the jets.
Yeah.
So that it would look like they were propeller aircraft.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely brilliant. So that just makes me think, all these diversions, why would Ben Rich let in on all the secrets in his book? Why would he? It's company man to the end. He went out and hiding the secrets.
You know what I wondered about, guys, and I don't know what you think, but one thing that this book really brought to my forefront is when he wrote about how Carter canceled the B-1 when he learned about the F-119 or whatever it was at the time, Have Blue.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that as a young man. I remember Carter canceling the B-1 and me thinking, what is wrong with this guy? He's a pacifist. He's selling us down the road. I can't believe he did this. Now, President Obama cancels the F-22. What did he know about?
Yeah.
Led him to that decision.
Yeah. Yeah, right. It's like when Reagan was going off about when he was on the campaign trail and he was like, why are you canceling the B-1B? Yeah. Why are you doing that? And finally they like brought him in and they're like, hey, this is why we're canceling it. So just, shut your mouth. Because he was like, I'm going to bring back all these jobs. And they were like, all right, dog, come here. If you win, you can't do this because we've got this thing. And he was like,
yeah.
Shut up.
But he did it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now it seems like he had to save face. But yeah, I think about that because we were supposed to have something like 900 F-22s, right? And Obama cut it back to like 150. And everyone's like, he's slashing the military. And part of me is like, I think he just got I think he just had a meeting and he was like, oh, okay. Yeah, no, we don't need that. Like, we have an orbital laser. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, or it may have even been, and I don't necessarily have the timeline right, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it may have even been the coming of the F-35 because, so yes, the F-22 as an airframe is more maneuverable thanks to its thrust vectoring, but the F-35, the amount of information, and every pilot who's flown it says the amount of information that it brings to the fight is almost game changing.
Yeah.
And just that is, I mean, you think about the F-35 and the helmet, the fact that the pilot has a custom fitted helmet and it uses basically augmented reality to let the pilot look through the bottom of the plane as they're flying.
Yeah.
And it feeds in all this data and it can talk to any plane, be it F-35, F-22. I think it can go back to 4th gen planes too and feed it information from the battlefield. Like in this day and age, like, that is key. Like that is air-to-air combat essentially. Is information where things at, like who's doing what.
Yeah, well that's what the B2 or sorry, the B-21 Raider, the successor, that's apparently one of the big things is it's basically you're just going to act as like this node, and they're like you're going to be able to just loiter at like 80,000 feet, basically invisible to radar. And yeah, you're just going to like it could almost, and I don't want to be stepping out of my area of expertise as a biology major, but apparently it can almost act as like an AWACS. It can just be, you put it up there and everything can feed it. The destroyers can link up to it and it can tell the satellites and it can tell the F-22s and the B-52s and the this, that, and the other thing. Yeah, it's all, like you said, Aaron, it seems like it's becoming more and more, not how many of these can you build, but just what can one of these do? Can one of these do everything? All right, well then let's get 100 of these and call it a day. But Paul, you brought this up in another episode. We talked about just like overwhelming. Like, so I watched Fury, as you suggested to me, the World War II movie with Brad Pitt, the tank movie. And it makes me think of Bill Burr was talking about history, and he was like, yeah, apparently it took one German tank to take out 4 of ours. And then so the historian goes, well, how did America win? And the American general goes, oh, we just made sure we always had 5. And it was just like, we can crank them out faster than you can. You can take out 4. Cool. Let's have. And that's what Bill Burr says is like, we just want McDonald's on it. We just want like billions and billions served. You want another one? Here's 10. And we can do it. The guy that I want to have on, the former VP of Skunkworks, said that in World War II, they were building was it P-80? I don't remember. Was it P-80? No, I don't think P-51, because I don't think that was Lockheed Martin or Lockheed. But he was saying, we built one of these, and I was thinking, oh, yeah, we're probably rolling one off every day. Every 1 hour and 10 minutes, we were building a fighter jet in World War II. Every 1 hour and 10 minutes. Wow. Keeping those factories open 3 shifts, 24/7. What is that? That's little, what is that, like 23, 22 craft a day, 150 a week? 600 a month. Like, we were just, okay, so cool. The Germans have the Messerschmitt. It can take down 4 of these. All right, just make sure we have 5. Like, just go in there, swarm them. So in that vein, and it worked, and we beat them. So, but now let's flip it. What if we have an F-22 or an F-35? Hey, this can take on 10 of your Chinese fighters. All right, but Paul, what we talked about last time, Ukraine being the breadbasket of the world, China is the Hello Kitty basket. They can just produce everything in mass. Maybe it's cheap. So what do you do if we have an F-22 or an F-35 or a B-21? What do you do when, this can dodge 99 of your SAMs? Okay, what if they have 100? Aaron, as someone with, I guess, more knowledge in this, what do you think about that? How advanced is the F-35, and do the Chinese just ratchet it up? Okay, it can take on 10 fighters. Stick it with 11.
I won't say I have an expertise about this, but I will try to interject an opinion. So the thing with the F-35 in particular is from what I understand of its design and from hearing pilots talk about it, it is, yes, it can come in and do some of those basic tasks, but its main job is to basically assist the other aircraft in the area for the fight. So yeah, we can dodge 99 of your SAMs, and if you bring 100, that's cool. But now we can dodge 99 of your SAMs and tell our 30, our 30 F-22s where your SAMs are, even that 100th one, and we can shoot it down. But to be honest, I don't really have much of a deep expertise on that subject. But I think, again, from what I understand, the F-35 is designed to be a node that can link up to other fifth gen and fourth gen aircraft to really make their attacks more efficient.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we're in the future we're going to see F-15s and maybe AC-130s or B-52s, just essentially bomb trucks that are carrying air-to-air missiles to be directed by an F-35.
Right.
As a full force multiplier, because the F-35, like Aaron pointed out, is not designed to be an air-to-air weapon or even to carry enough weapons to do much damage itself. And it gets a lot of criticism for that, but it's not designed to be a primary point of attack. It's designed to direct these bomb trucks, which it looks like maybe it's going to be the F-15. Haven't they just come out with a new set of racks that can put up to 22 air-to-air missiles on them or something like that?
I mean, yeah. I think I heard that.
That's insane. But yeah, it's weird. Yeah, because it seems like there are smarter ways to amplify your force. So I mean, the B-52s have been flying since the 50s, right? And they just got refurbished to fly through 2050. So these things are going to be going for 100 years. But it's almost like how they'd switch out like the avionics in the SR-71 or even the U-2. They're still using the U-2. They said there's not a day that goes by that we're not flying it on the DMZ. But it doesn't. You don't need two brain cells to figure out we're not using the same cameras from 1960, right? You got 2020 technology. As long as it's still the same payload in terms of weight and maneuverability, now you can, 60 years of Moore's law. Now you're putting on things out there, but that one U2 can do what 1,000 U2s did. So by changing but if the plane still flies, you're right. Why not just take a B-52 or this is just some big lumbering machine that can just carry weight. You don't have to make a new B-52. If you can just update the missiles, if you can get leaner, meaner, faster, more maneuverable, can seek their targets better, can shoot from farther away, could be hypersonic, could be stealth. Why not just get those? Like, those just need to be in the air, whether it's on some, cutting edge B-21 or whether it's just lumbering along on a B-52 that's been flying since Korea. Like, you're right. There are smarter ways to amplify your force 1,000-fold. I didn't really think about that. So it makes me think if something like the F-117, or when they finally realized just how stealthy this thing was, or like that they had created stuff. Well, I guess with the D-21, they said that radar signature is pretty low. But once they finally realized that this wasn't like a fluke, and that the radar cross-section really was that, Ben Rich is asking, how small is it? Like a car, a bird, like an eagle? He's like, Ben, think about an eagle's eyeball. And I was like, oh my God. And they weren't sure if, how accurate this thing was. And then once they finally got their tests verified by like an independent, I guess, radar professional from like MIT, once they realized that they're like, oh man, you really can't see this thing. They got slapped top secret special access program and went right to the top of the Pentagon and just get silent, because it was almost like the A-bomb in terms of like the next paradigm shift. It was like, oh wow, it's again a smarter way. The Russians are building 500 billion rubles worth of radar and missiles. Instead of trying to like out missile them, why don't we just sidestep like sneaky boy? You can't see it, so it doesn't matter. What do you think is the next? I mean, you would have like the jet engine that would be, out in Area 51. That's a huge one. No longer propellers. You can do maneuvers or maneuverability that was never before even imagined. If the next big one is stealth, I would imagine after that it would be drone capabilities. What do you think is, and this is just, there's no right or wrong answer. What do you think is like the next, hush hush? Because like even the idea of stealth, it wasn't that the idea was like magical. Everyone had been going after it for a while. We figured it out, and that's when it became quiet. What is the next idea? What is the next like air dominance? Like, this is the new paradigm. What do you think it is? I know I've just been ranting for like 10 minutes, but Aaron or Paul, whoever wants to answer it.
I'll let Paul go first.
Well, I would have to say AI and the loyal wingman, which doesn't get a lot of press, but you've got this program out there to build AI drones that can be controlled from a variety of platforms, not just the F-35, but a variety of platforms, everything from Air Force One to even some fourth generation craft, Navy ships. The attractiveness of being able to fly a loyal wingman into enemy territory and not risk a pilot is amazing. And the technology is getting better and better all the time. You know, that drone that landed on the aircraft carrier successfully a couple summers ago and just didn't get much attention. Oh, we're just going to make this into a tanker. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot more to it than that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah.
It'll tanker, and it's going to carry a bunch of air-to-air missiles and a couple of standard anti-ship missiles and whatever. And the AI capacity. Did you guys see that movie Stealth?
Yeah.
The real one where they had the CGI fighter that
Eddie
consciousness and everything.
Yeah, it's terrible. I love it.
I think that's the next breakthrough is the drones, the individual, not with a pilot sitting in Nevada in an air-conditioned trailer, but one aircraft's AI controlling all these loyal wingman drones that can be launched either from under the wings of B-52 aircraft carrier or for wherever. That's where I see it going.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. The AI, integrating AI into air-to-air combat, and I would even say, and maybe this falls under the scope of AI and I'm just not defining it right, but if you could have multiple drones that are in the air together and talking back and forth, and it's almost like a networked intelligence where one is its own individual intelligence and probably could do the job. But when you get 4, 5, 10 in the area, all of a sudden they can talk and say, hey, well, I see that SAM there. What do you see? Okay, shoot it down.
Yeah.
And being able to, so it's that AI, but to get to that level of AI from an engineering standpoint, I think the rate of data transmission, like when you get that level where you can transmit, terabytes of data wirelessly, instantaneously from jet to jet, I think that's what's really going to bust open the door for AI.
Yeah.
Okay, here's what's scary about that, though. Talk about the complexity theory of consciousness.
Yeah.
Which, in a nutshell, is that everything is conscious to some degree. And the more complexity that any system has, the higher consciousness that it develops.
Yeah.
So if you've got 10, you said 10 or 12 or 100 drones exchanging terabytes of information in a millisecond, how far from consciousness that we would recognize are these drones achieving? And then what happens?
Yeah.
Because this is a legit theory. You know, this is not something I'm making up like usual.
Yeah.
This is a real thing. And what you're talking about there has got to be at a point where some kind of rudimentary consciousness that we would recognize as an intellect is starting to maybe, I don't know, maybe the Terminator is stuck in my head.
Well, hey, as well as you should be, because Aaron is just teetering. Aaron is Skynet. He doesn't like to talk about it, but Aaron is ushering in Skynet. You are. And frankly, it scares me. And I'm glad I have these podcasts with you so that I've probably accurately, with the amount of video of you, probably got like, 7, 8 hours. I can 3D model and construct you, and I can feed your information to the authorities so that you can be hunted down. When you, all right, Aaron? So, yeah, you've walked right into my trap. But, yeah, you're right. When it almost works like a bunch of birds, and they're all, and it's not that they're all following one. They really they move together, like simultaneously. It's not that they're following one another. It's they all move in these weird psychedelic shapes and stuff, or schools of fish, or even like bees and stuff. Like they do insane things. It almost seems like one mind. What happens when like Aaron, you said, there's one that could do the job. It can just be like a lone soldier. But just like almost like the Delta Force guys I have on, one person, like they know how to survive. But what Dale Comstock said about his Delta Force team, he said we flowed like water. Like when you would put us into a building, it was almost like a natural law. We just almost unconsciously would like fill the gaps. He said we flowed like water and just killed everything in our path. And like, what happens when you get 100 drones and they just start flowing like water? And it's not someone back in like Utah or something with a satellite data link. What happens when it's autonomous, when it's software? What Aaron, we talked about yesterday, the bipedal organism, the million iterations of like a software cycle, and it finally develops like the little thing that can walk. Like you've seen those like time lapses. What happens when all of a sudden you can just launch 1,000 drones from an aircraft carrier and just have them go swarm something? Like you don't even necessarily need to know the tactic. Like you don't have to say, hey, go here and take out this building in China. You can just say, find this guy and go take him out. And they might take him out in a way that like you couldn't imagine. Does that make sense? Aaron, you froze up. Paul, you still there?
Still here, yeah.
You're still here, all right. Yeah. Aaron froze. What do you think?
Well, I think it's real interesting, and again, another Star Trek reference. I've stuck in my head, but Star Trek Beyond had that same thing. There was a drone fleet that they all flew, like you pointed out, in those weird ways that like swallows do. And it had essentially a mind of its own, and it ended up with a silly lesson about the triumph of rock and roll or something, but it was still an interesting concept. And I really think that's the future, and I think that's what's going on, and that's why we see these UFOs, which appear to defy the laws of physics. One, because the laws of physics continually to change and expand. You know, we thought they were we thought the laws of gravity were what they were, but now we realize there's a whole world of quantum rules that we know nothing about.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it's going, and who knows when we'll actually discover it? Probably not until after it's used in warfare. I still remember the night of Desert Storm, shock and awe, to watch those missiles fly right down the tailpipe, essentially, of the Iraqis, and how stunned we were at what stealth fighters could do, and we didn't know what they were capable. We had no idea, and I think that hopefully that day will come, but that's when we'll eventually find out.
Yeah. To piggyback off what you said, if you look at history, I mean, think about the Manhattan Project and the A-bomb. Nobody had any idea what was going on. And you're talking, 80-something, almost 100 years ago, we created a nuclear bomb with 1930s and 1940s technology. So now think about the fact, think about the fact that since then we've created transistors. And not only have we created transistors, but they've exponentially grown now to the point where we can get billions of them on a single chip, and they can process billions of commands in basically no time. So you're not going to know what those fighters are capable of until we actually need to show them. And as far from an AI perspective, as much as we were talking about this yesterday, as much as I don't want the technology advancement to come from warfare, honestly, we're going to see AI. The first time we really see what AI does and how far we've developed it, it'll be in a warfare application.
Absolutely. It'll 100%. You both hit on something. The F-117 and Desert Storm, and then the A-bomb. I mean, they talk about the A-bomb in Raven Rock, and they said, 150,000 people worked on it. They said with normal classifications, you'll have 150,000 people, or whatever your number, not that much. Maybe you'll have 1,000 people, and they'll be working on something, but they don't know what it is they're working on because it's compartmentalized. They said with the A-bomb, the secrecy was so high that it's not that they didn't just know what project they were working on. They didn't know that they were working on a project. It wasn't just, I wonder what this all is. We're kept in the dark. It was, you didn't know. It'd be like right now if I was somehow working for the DOD, right? And it'd be like, it wasn't that I wasn't cleared. It was that I had no idea. And they describe it as like But, you know, you kind of had to – there was really no way to keep the lid on it once there was a second sunrise over Japan. And it was like, hey, yeah, by the way, that was us. Like, or with the F-117, it was – there was really no way to hide it when all of a sudden, like, videos were coming out in Iraq. And it was like no one saw anything. And then stuff just started exploding. And it was like, how did you – like the freeze frame shows a bomb going down the chimney. Okay, maybe that's a 1 in a billion shot. But then a bomb went down that chimney too, and then that chimney. And it was like, what the hell is going on? Dude, they talk about in Skunk Works how, like, they knew when the – because, again, in just American brilliance is they were like, why – because they have all these all these radar dishes guiding all their missiles surrounding Baghdad. And instead of trying to hit all the missiles, we just figured – what if we just hit the communications between them? Right? A much easier way to do it. Like in World War II, why take out the tanks when you could take out the tank factories? Why take out the tank factories when you could just take out the one power plant, right? Go way up the chain and just kill it. It's a waterfall down. So we took out the communications plants in Baghdad, but they knew it was coming. The guys at Skunk Works, I guess they were cleared on it. And they were watching CNN report live. And they're like, hey, it's going to go dark in 5, 4, the guys like, and here we are in Baghdad, and the screen cuts out, and they all cheered. And it was like, dude, if they knew what so point of me getting at is with the A-bomb, the second sunrise, and then just this insane, like, what was happening? Yeah, there were videos on the news, and it was like, it's cameras from the bomb, and it's what I had on David Libby, the guy who's a F-117 historian at Holloman Air Force Base, and he's like, oh, yeah, no, we could hit the guy in a passenger seat of a car on the left side of the highway doing 65 miles an hour. And he's like, oh, and we love doing it. And it was like, we could just pinpoint him and be like, you're gone. And yeah, so even if the bomb doesn't explode, just the kinetic energy. Yeah, man. And this was like, what, when was Desert Storm? 91, 93? Paul? I don't remember. I was 1. I don't remember what year it was.
Yeah, I was a kid then. I was like 1 or 2.
Sorry, Paul. You're our sensei.
That's how I was in law school.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So sorry. Me and Aaron we're a little too young for this. But yeah, what is the next thing? And I think you're right. I think we'll just see it in warfare. I mean, it's terrible, but that's when it will come out. It'll come out on. I don't know, man. Maybe that's what those. What do y'all think of? It just makes me think. What would the next thing be? And I'm thinking as I say it. Didn't the Pentagon release a couple months ago? They confirmed that UFO sighting, saying it was a UFO. The one that was spotted over the Nimitz in 2004. That naval commander went on Joe Rogan and talked about it. Aaron, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The Tic Tac.
Yeah, like my thing with that though is like so my personal theories, and they're personal, so it's
my podcast.
Just what I think. Yeah, you gotta be really careful because, like, who knows? NASA could be watching. They could be like, what is Aaron doing? What is he saying? Yeah. All of a sudden, I get an email like, Mr. Shepard, we need to talk to you. But my personal theory about it is that it is either so high up that section of the Pentagon just does not know. So they're like, yeah, it really is a UFO, or it's a gorilla suit. It's hypersonics will never work. It's kind of a hiding in plain sight. Like, no, like we really do have this awesome aircraft technology that can outrun an F-18 and do all these crazy maneuvers, but we're not going to tell you. So we're just going to say it's a UFO and go on about the day.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, you're right. What better way to just hide it than the Pentagon going, yep, it's a UFO. Like, it's like, all right, well, done with that. Like, I guess we put that one aside. Or, yeah, my favorite, like, conspiratorial take on it is yeah, it's just not everyone in the military was cleared for this. In fact, a very small number of people were. I mean, what if we figured out some drone capability? You don't need a human in there, so it can do these insane, like, 1,000 G maneuvers. Would that not be an A-bomb, an F-117? Would that not be like the next? And when it came out, it would be a second sunrise over Japan, bombs going down chimneys left and right. How else would we perceive it? Because we look back at these things, we now know in hindsight. But you got to think, what would it look like now? Well, I imagine it would look like a UFO, and a naval commander goes on Joe Rogan and says, yeah, man, I think it was a UFO, right? What other way, if it was that high, yeah, if it was, what other paradigm shifting thing would there be? It would be a hypersonic Tic Tac that it could, what?
What's a UFO? A UFO is not an alien aircraft. A UFO is an unidentified flying object. And to that pilot, that was an unidentified flying object. And probably to the captain and the aircraft carrier was unidentified. And to whoever was above them in the information service in the Navy. The book was full of examples of where one branch didn't know what the other branch was doing. And the higher ups, very few actually knew about the U2. And so I completely agree with your theory that these things are being built whether by DARPA or Skunk Works or something even more black than that. And even a captain of an aircraft carrier has no idea what these guys are doing. You know, look what they did with the pilots for the U2. They made them drum out of the service and become civilian employees. And so, of course, they're hiding it from their own.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And what better way to test it than not even test it against your enemies? Test it against the best military in the world. If you can evade the U.S. Navy, right? If you can take on a carrier strike group and they don't even know what you are, well then shit, man, you can go take on anyone, right? And it's like you go test it out at Area 51. Everyone knows it's a test. What if you bring it in real life and don't even tell anyone it's a test, and just be like, let's see if this puppy can dance. Like you go in there and you leave an aircraft carrier strike group just dumbfounded. Well, damn, man, if that's not your F-117 test, that's not your Alamogordo, New Mexico nuke going off. Like, but yeah, I feel like that's what it would subjectively look like. Is it would be this baffling, that's got to be a UFO, right? I don't know. I'm at a loss.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you now, if I get fired from my internship tomorrow, it's your fault. You get that email saying, Mr. Shepard, we need to talk to you.
Yes. You guys were talking about Project X. Yeah, man. I don't know, dude. I don't know. But when you see, my favorite thing ever was like, it was like a picture of like a 1964 TV, and this was in 2017. It was a 1964 TV, literally like from like I Love Lucy. It's got like the knobs and it's like the size of a bureau. And then next to it is 2017, like 8K OLED curved screen. And then on the left, it's got a 1964 like Cadillac. And then on the right, it's got the dashboard of a 1964 Cadillac. And then on the right is the dashboard of a 2017 Tesla. And then it's like some Oldsmobile and then some Lamborghini. And then it's like a rotary telephone and then a smartphone. And then finally, the last panel is on the left, 1964. It's the SR-71. And on the right is just a question mark. And it's like, you're right. Like, we look at these gaps, and then it's the SR-71 back then. And it's like, oh, damn. Like, when you see the jump in technology, civilian technology, well, shit, what could possibly be going on today? Yeah, man, I don't know. It baffles the mind. Do you think that there is a hypersonic craft out, not just a Tic Tac? Do you give any like validity to the Aurora theory? Do either of y'all know what that is? The Aurora craft?
I think I remember hearing it, but can you say it again for the audience too?
Yeah. It's the idea of like we retired the SR-71 in '99 because of spy satellites, but then you have these heads of former Pentagon, I guess, higher ups. You have generals. And then they have the former heads of things like Skunk Works and Phantom Works, and they all always say satellites are great, but there's nothing like an actual craft. because it's unpredictable. You can go wherever you want, and you go there so fast, and you don't know its route. You're not scheduled like a satellite. They said there will always be a place for overflight. And when an SR-71 is just retired with no successor, it just kind of seems like a bunch of bullshit. Like, hey, Tommy, you were drinking every day for 11 years and then you just stopped? Yeah, I just stopped. Like, you still seem kind of drunk, but nope, no bottles around. And it's like, well, dude, you just went to pills. Like, you're just doing something else. Like, not to use like a terrible analogy, but the SR-71, it just stops. It just stops. And that's that. It was a good run, everyone. Nothing else to see here. I don't know, man. I'm calling horse shit. And so the idea is that the Aurora has been the successor since like the late 80s, early 90s, and that it's capable, it's of at least hypersonic, so Mach 5. But the idea is, it's an overflight craft, and like the SR-71, it goes higher and it goes faster, and there's all sorts of reports over like Groom Lake and Nevada and Southern California all throughout the 90s of, they call them airquakes. It was earthquakes in the sky because the sonic booms are so loud they were setting off like the Richter scale. And there's even like reports of and it would always happen on like it was always the third Thursday of every month at like 5:02 a.m. Every month there was just an earthquake. And it got to the point where they were even like plotting it, and they're like, you could see earthquake reports come in from the West Coast to the East Coast, and then there'd be a gap, and then you'd be able to see earthquake reports in like London and the Nordic countries, and it's like, well, hold on, something's just streaking across the sky. And of course and then the thing that points to it the most, I think it was like one day in like 95 or something when all these things were happening on the third Thursday of every month. Well, then in November, it didn't happen. It happened on a Wednesday, and it's because no one wanted to work on Thanksgiving. And on Thanksgiving being Thursday, these took place on a Wednesday. And that was the only time. And it's like, they just didn't want to work on Thanksgiving. What do y'all think about that? Is there any credence to that, or is that just a juicy conspiracy theory?
Well, I think there's plenty to it. I've even seen photographs from a guy in Texas he watches this stuff of the triangular aircraft flying over. There was clearly not a B-2. And I'll have to look it up. I can find it again. And it was very persuasive. There was a formation, I think, of 3 of these things flying over Texas. I don't know, Aaron, are you familiar with what I'm talking about? Have you seen that?
Yeah, the triangular air. Yeah, I've seen that. And I would agree with you. The engineer in me is like, I'm looking back at our past and extrapolating out to the future. And if we kept the Manhattan Project under wraps, if we kept the SR-71 under wraps, I mean, when we were test flying the SR-71, or not even just test flying it, but when it was flying in Japan, the locals thought it was like a god because they like saw the long fuselage and they thought it was like a flying black snake. So, and I think the god's name is related to the word Habu. And so jokingly enough, the SR-71 pilots, like they get a Habu Habu patch to show that they've flown the plane. Yeah. But to watch the locals kind of go crazy, like, oh my God, is this the second coming of, our God, or what's going on? And then you think about the F-117, again, like I can't imagine how many UFO reports were called in for people seeing it flying, because if you look at the fuselage of the F-117, it's like a freaking spaceship.
Yeah.
So, I think that honestly, the Black Triangles is just the next step in development. Maybe it's a hypersonic aircraft that pulls maybe it's hypersonic and a drone aircraft and it pulls Mach 8 or something crazy like that. We won't know until we need it until it comes up in warfare. But I honestly think that's what's going on.
Yeah, I just don't see how it couldn't. When they went from the U-2 to the SR-71, Kelly Johnson literally said, he was like, all right, like let's we need to build the successor because we got shot down, and Eisenhower was like, we can't keep doing this. And same with Richard Bissell of the CIA, and they're like, in true American fashion, it wasn't just like, all right, we won't do it anymore. Publicly, we were like, we won't do it anymore. And then they're like skunkworks, and then we're like, hey, you just got to go faster and higher, and just like, you know, Uncle Sam don't sleep. And so Kelly Johnson was like, yeah, all right, let's. The U-2 already had the height record; it was like 70,000 feet, and Kelly Johnson was like, yeah, I want this puppy going up at 95,000 feet. And then I think the quote is, and I don't want to just build a craft that's going to be obsolete in 5 more years once the Russians catch up with us. So he said, we're going to crank the speed up to Mach 3, going to have it flying at close to 100,000 feet. And he's like, I don't know, give it like a 4,000 mile range. And this was like the early 60s. And they were like, all right, like, let's do it. And again, think like the Beatles had just come to the United States and played at Shea Stadium. Like the Beatles, like Twist and Shout was like, oh, those kids, those uppity kids are listening to Twist and Shout. Ah, like this is before Woodstock, and there's this thing going on. Why wouldn't that be the next? It makes. I mean, I get spy satellites. I get the value of them and your ability to always up there, always keeping an eye on them. I just don't see us like neutering ourselves and being like, all right, no more overflights. To me, it makes sense. Like,
definitely with spy sats too. I think one of. Sorry, you're on a bit of a lag from my end. So
you're good. You're good.
So from spy sats, I definitely think like you said, there's an inherent disadvantage to them in that once you're in orbit, you're following the same path unless you change your plane. What was it earlier this year when Iran was testing a rocket or something and it blew up on the pad? Trump tweeted out a picture from one of our spy sats that picked it up from space.
Yeah.
And that was a classified sat, but because he tweeted out the picture, just from the picture alone, amateurs were able to track it in 2 hours. So that's why you're
Jesus. I know what you're talking about, but yeah, it was, yeah. And sorry, I know.
Yeah, sorry. The lag is really bad, but
I'm sorry.
No worries. But yeah, so you're always going to have a need for something in the sky that's in the sky, not necessarily on an orbital plane, just an aircraft that can change direction at any moment, whether you order it to or whether it orders itself. So that way there is that factor of unpredictability.
Yeah. And not only that, what do y'all think about the X-37B, the Air Force's space plane? Takes off on a rocket from Vandenberg. Excuse me. Takes off on a rocket from Vandenberg. Like it goes up like a normal payload. But I think recently it was up its last trip. It keeps breaking its record, and its last trip was like 900 days in orbit. And it goes up. Have you not seen this thing? Do you know what it is, Aaron? Of course you do. You're NASA. X-37B. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like a mini space shuttle almost. And the rumor with that, and rumor just being from a bunch of people like me who have no actual inside scoop, it's just making up shit and being like, yeah, I agree. I think that's what it is. But the idea is like, this is like, it's a maneuverable satellite. Like, let's not bottleneck ourselves with, we got to just keep putting up these NRO or National Geospatial Agency satellites. And like, okay, we just got to put up 1,000 of them to get all the planes. And the idea is like, okay, well, what if you put one up there that had the maneuverability or the ability to maneuver like an aircraft, but you just put it in orbit? So it's an X-37 that can go up and it can sync up and just be sitting over Moscow, but then with no warning can be like, all right, go check out the South China Sea, and it can change its orbit to go to that. Is that the next step? So you take the maneuverability of an SR-71, an Aurora, or a U-2, where you can, get a bird up there, but it's always ready. And I would imagine that if this came to pass, you wouldn't just have one X-37B. You'd put up, 20 of them, and you'd have them all. This is your section of the Earth, and you just maneuver. If you couldn't track those, Or if you could track them, but didn't matter because then they could just go shift. Like, is that not is that the next step in surveillance?
Maybe. I'm my orbital mechanics is a little rusty, but I know
I don't know anything about orbital mechanics.
I know that with rockets, at least, when they're to change their, like, so with the SpaceX launch, and I know we're getting off topic, but it's aerospace.
There's no topic. There's no topic. Just go with it.
Yeah. So with the SpaceX launch, the reason why they had that instantaneous window was because the Earth had to be, like, Florida had to be lined up on the same orbital plane as the United States. And if the Earth rotated a little bit past that, the rocket wouldn't have enough fuel to correct its orbit and get in line with the International Space Station. So I know when you're talking about moving on an orbital level, it's difficult to actually change where you're going. But that's not to say that it hasn't been figured out. I mean, you're talking about the nation that created a plane, a big ass plane that has a radar cross section of a pea. Like, so.
Yeah.
And maybe I wouldn't be surprised if I'm going full conspiracy theorist on y'all.
Go for it. Put the tinfoil hats on. Let's do it.
Tinfoil hats. Let's go. I'm not going to have a job tomorrow, y'all.
Who cares, man? I'll hire you. You can work for TPC.
But I wouldn't be surprised if, like, because when you're talking about traditional fueling methods, like most of the weight of a rocket is the fuel itself.
Mm-hmm.
Because chemical propulsion it's heavy, it's inefficient, all that. But when you start getting into nuclear propulsion, where you can generate large amounts of energy from a single reactor, like, yes, that has a weight, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is some higher level black project where there are nuclear space planes just flying all over the place and we don't know it, or they're testing that right now, and eventually we'll hear about it in 30 years.
Yeah, that's to me. Yeah, that's what makes the most sense to me, is because those can, like, quite literally hide in plain sight. Like, it's right. The higher and higher up you gets to a point where you just can't see it. So, like, you can just be floating over the Earth. No one can see it. I mean, you're just, aside from, like, a select few agencies. But it seems like, because it's always about getting the higher ground. And space is the ultimate high ground. And it's one thing I think about is, like, sort of hidden in plain sight type stuff is I feel like I don't see someone like Elon Musk, who I love, and I'm not saying this in any negative way. If anything, this is pure praise, that has all these clearances because he brings a lot of classified payloads up for Uncle Sam. I just don't see Starlink being, like, completely innocent. And I don't mean that in, like, a weapon system way. I just don't see, like, Uncle Sam not having, like, their fingers in that pie. I mean, if he's launching these, like, right, this just massive constellation that's going all over the Earth, is that not a juicy platform to maybe have your thing go up there too with it, whatever your thing is? You know, hey, just plop one of our little cameras right here. Or, you know, NSA, hey, just put this little black box on the side. That's all you got to do, serve your country, right? Does that make sense? Do you think that would be something? I mean, that is, what better way to hide it in plain sight than be like, oh, that's not us, that's Starlink, you know? Because if it's not Starlink and you just see these streaks of multiple things, it's not the 50s anymore. We don't think they're flying saucers. If you saw streaks of stuff, you'd be like, oh, that's an orbital weapon system. But if, like, meme master Elon Musk sends it up and he talks about it on Joe Rogan, it's, oh, this is just the future is now. Like, so cool. Like, I love the future. But what better way to just blend in into plain sight than, like, Paul, we talked about this with Raven Rock, how in the 50s and 60s, AT&T put these little boxes on top of almost all of the telephone poles in all the major cities in the United States. And they had special digital arrays on them that could detect certain light flash signatures of nuclear weapons and send it back to the Pentagon. So on top of all of our radars and people reporting, this isn't a conspiracy. This is a declassified thing. If a nuke went off, all these little boxes on top of all the telephone, before they were vaporized, they'd get that, whatever it is, the gamma pulse, the X-ray pulse, whatever. They'd send the data back. And then because they're no longer pinging with the Pentagon, you can tell by their absence of signal that a nuke has gone off there. So we've had these things hidden in plain. And Paul, I think we talked about this. Like, what if you go back to the 60s and just grab someone and be like, see that telephone pole? I'm like, yeah. Did you know that's actually linked up to the Pentagon? All right, Grandpa. All right, take your meds, Grandpa. All right, I think you're having more flashbacks. No, it's linked up to the Pentagon, and there are, the nukes. There are more nukes, and we're worried about the nukes coming. And if they flash off, these are going straight to the president. Okay, Grandpa. But that's exactly what happened. So, like, is there something with Starlink? Yeah, right now it's like, Tommy, you sound like a psychopath, but in 50 years, it's like, hey, that asshole was right.
Well, remember when you said that to me, I didn't say you were crazy. I said, oh, yeah, let me send you a picture of the hatch that shows the telecommunications service installed in Little Dixon, Illinois, when Reagan was president, because he would come here occasionally, and no one knows about it, but it's buried in the basement of the Methodist Church, and it's all hooked up to the White House and the Pentagon.
Yeah,
I believed you 100%.
Yeah, you sent me the pictures. It's these little like physical infrastructure, right? That you over on your way to work. But these are literally parts of the things that were built into like the presidential communication network. And again, imagine if you could go back to the 80s. Red Dawn just came out, and you'd be like, "Hey, you see that? You see that manhole cover looking thing? That goes straight to Reagan's office." All right, dude. Like, like pass the bong, but that's what it was. So I don't know. Is there any validity to that? Or no? Yay, nay. You guys cool with doing like 9 more minutes? 9 more minutes? Love?
Yeah, I can do it.
Oh, sorry, you guys both froze up. Paul, you good with that?
Yeah.
All right. Is there any, so just tinkering with, and yeah, it's disclaimer, like full tinfoil hat. Like I have a tinfoil top hat on right now. Like I've got a 3-piece tinfoil suit, right? Is there, rest in peace, Aaron's job, is there any validity to Starlink? Do you think there's any backdoor on that? Is there any weapon system, any unconventional weapon system or surveillance thing that's maybe that's the next step? We keep thinking it's going to be faster and higher flying planes, but that's a linear extrapolation. The former Secretary of the Air Force said, loosely quote, don't fall in the belief system that it has to be an aircraft. It's about air dominance. If it means pressing a button and the planes fall out of the sky, that is the next generation fighter craft. It's just not, it doesn't have a Top Gun pilot with wings.
One thing that I know from, go on.
Aaron?
Yeah.
Is it lagging?
One thing that I know from the history of just design, and I'm kind of extrapolating here, so full tinfoil hat, but NASA in particular has an interesting history of having ideas and then revisiting them, like at the time it being like, I don't know, and then uncovering them 20, 30, 40 years later and bringing them out. Okay. You see it with aircraft, you see it with the technology that they build. And so I can imagine that the same logic applies to the Department of Defense, where they'll have an idea, be like, how about that? Or, we can't do that now. But then somebody will come back around eventually and say, hey, you remember that one thing? Yeah. So in the 80s, we all know about the Star Wars program, where, the idea, the rods from God.
Yeah.
And so what if you have the Starlink, which is a constellation of satellites that are supposed to be passing data along, but what if somebody came to Elon and said, hey, we'll give you an extra $3 billion if you just slip this thing on, don't ask any questions, and it's some new iteration of the rods from God, which at this point are technically illegal because of the Outer Space Treaty in the 60s, but I mean, putting surveillance satellites up in space that's a gray line.
Hey, whoever has the weapons makes the laws, and it's illegal. Who the hell is going to enforce it? Yeah, like, hey, America, you can't do that. All right, what are you going to do about it, right? It's all right. But yeah, what if there's something that's going along with that? Do they serve as docking stations for the X-37? Are they contingency like satellites? I saw one thing, it was Paul, is in the light of like Raven Rock, all the nuclear bunkers and the continuity of government system. One thing that would happen after a nuclear blast is you'd have these big silo doors open up over all these bunkers, and these huge communication antenna would come out. They were like, you had your ones up there, and then you're expecting for the megaton blast to just vaporize them. We had second ones that would then come up. So it was literally like redeploy. Well, since then, they said that like there's another thing now where we're expecting like in the next age of warfare, the first thing you do is you would blast out your enemy's satellites. I mean, maybe you don't even need to physically hit them. You just, you throw a net of megaton bombs and let the EMP do their thing. Well, I remember seeing something and it was like, well, the first thing the United States would do is we'd shoot up like an ICBM with like 1,000 microsats on it. And the first thing they would do is reestablish like global communication between all of our aircraft carriers and all of our bases. And it's like, what if there, so what's an even better way? The first best thing is you have a missile ready with all of those microsats, right? Which, hey, we've had missiles on the ready for the past 60 years. So that's not an expense we're worrying about. But the next best thing would be to already have them up there. Who is there inside of each Starlink? And this is, I mean, I've got a tinfoil bathrobe on now. Inside of each Starlink, Paul, did you just change your background to Star Trek?
Yeah, I thought your flag was so much nicer than mine. So
it was badass, man. I was just like, Paul, you with this? But like, yeah, it's what would the next best thing be? It would be having inside Starlink. What if you just had a little like microsat for the DoD? You just wrap that puppy in a Faraday cage, and if everything blows up, including Starlinks, they're all fried. Well, those things just open up, and it's, ideally you'll never have to use it, and they will be quietly shelved in 50 years. I don't see that being beyond the scope of something that we would do. Is you just get in the back, like, because we do things through civilian companies all the time, be it us buying titanium for the SR-71 from the Soviet Union, being us working with the mafia to guard the ports in New York City during World War II. Like, it's all this goofy shit. It always gets declassified that we did just that. And oftentimes it's far crazier than anything you could ever imagine. End of rant. Sorry. Hello? You guys here?
Yeah.
For a minute,
yeah.
What?
We're both laggy.
Okay.
Yeah. You said something interesting. So my family's actually from Panama, so I know this story better than most, but in the late 80s and early 90s or especially in the 80s with the war on crack, the drugs were coming from Colombia and making their way up to the United States. Well, the US government played their hand in it because they were using that money to fund our activities over in the Middle East with Saddam Hussein, trying to put him in power so that way he can act in our interest. And then just at the moment where we were about to be exposed, all of a sudden we changed our tune and went after Noriega and, bombed Panama and said, no, we hate drugs. But we were using drug money to fund our military activity out in the Middle East.
Yeah, I agree with Aaron completely. It'd be very naive to think that Elon Musk is going to circle the globe with this network of very advanced satellites, and the government is not going to have a finger in that pie.
Exactly.
Elon Musk is always stepping on his you-know-what. He's always giving the government a chance to say, look, buddy, you can pay this $150 million fine, or maybe we can
You're
work
right.
out some kind of a deal here.
You're right. He does. It does seem like he manages to get away with a whole lot, doesn't it? It does seem to, even if it's just fines, like SEC fines or something, but it does seem like he gets away with an awful lot. And I imagine it's because, hey, he's our little Tony Stark, Tony Stark has a bit of, he's a womanizer. I'm not saying that's what Elon is. Tony Stark, he's always drinking. He's always getting in trouble. He's always blowing up shit. And they just kind of look the other way. Tony, you shouldn't have these like radioactive elements, but, you're our guy. And all right, whatever, for every purchase of 100 million, I'll throw in one of these too. Is that what Elon is? It's like, hey, man, like, you can smoke pot on Rogan. I understand it's great for your like millennial image perception. We're not going to throw you in Guantanamo or some, ADX Florence. Just, we've got an idea we got the schematics for Neuralink. Mind putting this in there? Like, yeah, all right, sure, right? And Elon is unabashedly American. He says he thinks America is the greatest invention of humanity. That's what I love about him, is he does not care. He is all for it. So that's a good point, Paul. Seems to be getting away with these slaps on the wrist that most people seem like would get fucked by. Yeah, if you don't think there's someone up there that is, hey, we need to sue Elon. It's almost like Reagan with the B-1B, and they just pull him aside. They're like, do you know what Elon's doing for us? And it's just like, okay. Like, he's okay. He's breaking quarantine. He's breaking stay-at-home orders to open up Tesla. We'll look the other way. Like, right? Because he's putting up Star Wars Part 2. Any more on that?
It's probably like he does something stupid and the government is like, yes, now we can put up that new space weapon.
Yeah, it's almost
like, yes, Elon, keep saying dumb shit. Yes.
Yeah. I had friends that were like, man, like I loved when like my parents like got divorced because they're like they just both kept buying me more presents. it's like, hey man, I'd love when they'd be mean because it'd be like it's terrible, but I think that's what it is. Hey, here, wait for it. It's like they're all in the Pentagon Situation Room about to cheer. You see Elon take a hit on Rogan, and they're like, woo! It's just like they're all putting on the party hats, like popping champagne. Like, we got it, boys. Like Reagan would be proud. We're putting up SDI. The Congo line. Oh, wait, he's taking shots too. They're, yeah. Elon tweets, free America now. And they're like, oh, baby, it's game day. It's Elon, please don't sue me. Don't. And NASA, please don't fire Aaron. Paul, I think you're good. I don't think Paul needs it. Right, Paul?
Let's hope not.
Well, gentlemen, the AC is broken in my house, and I'm sweating my ass off, so I'm going to wrap this one up. But brilliant episode. Thank you both. That was fun. And, yeah, I would definitely love to do Aaron, remember yesterday when I was talking about that pod?
Yeah.
This is why. See, like the lagging, the audio. Remember how I said it can really just kick a conversation right in the nuts? That's why. I want Paul, I was telling Aaron, I want him to develop me like an 8K satellite internet through Neuralink, sponsored by the NRO. I want like a pod. I don't want people to come into a studio. When my podcast gets big, I don't want to have a Rogan studio. I don't want to meet these people. I just want someone to deliver like a pod to the guest's house. And it literally beep, opens up, perfect audio. It's got a microphone. It's got everything, 8K, satellite feed, terabyte a second. And then when it's over, it's over. Because I hate when shit lags. The sound effects were natural, by the way. Those weren't fake. You might have thought that they were fake because they were so good. But that was right here, baby. But yeah, man.
Oh, shit.
So don't worry, Aaron. If NASA fires you, just keep working on Cogito and develop those pods, and I will hire you. I promise. No bid contract.
Unless you want me to put something up there that ain't supposed to be up there.
Well, hey, man. Do everything. Do everything for Uncle Sam. If Uncle Sam's watching, I will happily do anything for you. I'm not sure there's much I can peddle for you guys, but who knows, man? Maybe if I can get on that Skunkworks guy, maybe I can start clawing up like the black world of like projects. Maybe I can just keep getting up there till finally I can become an agent. Now I'm just going off my own fantasy. All right, gentlemen, TPC 122, Aaron Shepard, Paul Whitcomb. The conclusion of this, I don't know, man. You listen and figure it out. Tinfoil hats, UFOs, everything. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for doing it.
We talked about aircraft, Skunkworks.
We did. We got onto aircraft, Skunkworks. We got onto a whole bunch, and but like always, it eventually just devolves into chaos, and that's what I like about it. Thank you, my friends. Stay safe out there with coronavirus and riots and I don't know, whatever the hell July is bringing. Because 2020 is the season finale.
Peace, my friends.
Goodbye, my friends. Thank you so much for doing it. Peace.
Peace.